In other words, if you and I have a conversation about opposing Bush's policies in Iraq, George W. Bush can now claim that we are conspirators, and under this executive order issued on the 17th of July, 2007, just several days ago, George W. Bush can have you and I have all of our assets frozen, our credit cards frozen, our bank accounts taken, our homes seized, our cars seized, and we are immediately rendered non-persons in the United States, homeless persons in the United States, and what? Well, there's a lot of people pushing back on this, not just this particular executive order, but just this whole idea that the President of the United States has powers that even King George III didn't claim. One of them is Paul Craig Roberts. Paul Craig Roberts, welcome to the program.
Hi, thank you, Tom.
Good to have you with us. In your column a couple of days ago, you say, unless Congress immediately impeaches Bush and Cheney, a year from now, the U.S. could be a dictatorial police state at war with Iran. Those are very, very strong words, sir, coming from a former Assistant Secretary of the Treasury in the Reagan administration.
Well, I don't actually think they're very strong. I get a lot of flack that they're understated and the situation is worse than I say. Consider, for example, the executive order you were reading from before we started talking. When Bush exercises this authority, which I don't believe he has, there's no check to it. It doesn't have to be ratified by Congress. The people who bear the brunt of these dictatorial police state actions have no recourse to the judiciary. So it really is a form of just total one-man absolute rule. Now, most Americans will say, well, I don't have anything to fear. I'm not doing anything wrong. If that's the case, Tom, why did the founders write the Constitution of the United States? Did they write it only for people who were doing things wrong and had things to fear? So the American people don't really understand the danger that they face. And they also don't understand, Tom, that given Bush's dismal approval record, rating where he stands, it's a total wipeout for Republicans in 2008. If you look at conventional wisdom, Bush makes no sense. Cheney makes no sense. It's much more likely that Cheney and Roe have in mind events that will once again rally the people behind President Bush and behind the Republican Party that is fighting the war on terror. Something's in the works. And when it happens, whether it's authentic or whether it's orchestrated and staged, all of those executive orders are implemented just like that. And they go far beyond the ones that you quoted. They essentially create a dictatorial police state in which Congress and the judiciary have no roles.
Yesterday we talked with Bruce Fine, and he was arguing that impeachment against Bush and Cheney must proceed immediately in order to rescue the Constitution, inasmuch as the executive branch has taken on powers to itself that were never envisioned by the founders, and in fact even exceed the powers that Julius Caesar and King George III took to themselves. That is, the power to reach into any nation in the world and seize people and torture them, imprison them, whatever, without habeas corpus. You're making a slightly different argument. You're suggesting that the Republicans, and this is a little bit more of a political calculation, that the Republicans are not stupid, that they realize that they're going to go down in flames in 2008, and so something terrible is going to happen between now and then to stop that from happening. Do I have that right?
Well, that's what they keep telling us. Michael Chertoff, the so-called Homeland Security Director. Now, notice, too, Tom, Homeland, that's a Nazi term. Well, when have Americans ever call this the homeland? I mean, this is a brand new thing they've created. Now, to get back to your question, first of all, Bruce Fine is completely correct. I totally agree with him. Second, yes, I take one more step. I point out that administration figures themselves and prominent Republican propagandists, and also the recent intelligence report, National Intelligence Estimate, are preparing us for another 9/11 event or series of events. Chertoff has predicted them. Rick Santorum, the former Republican senator, said recently that all this anti-war attitude of the American public would soon disappear after the next series of attacks that we were going to experience. And, of course, the National Intelligence Estimate is saying that al-Qaeda has regrouped, is strong again, and is sending operatives here to the U.S. to blow us up again. If enough people were suspicious and alert, it would be harder for the administration to get away with it. I don't think these wake-up calls are likely to be effective. One reason is what is known as the mainstream media is highly concentrated and controlled by about 5 huge mega corporations that will not cross the government, so you're not going to get any news out that way other than what the government wants out. So I don't know that we can do anything. I write and try to make people aware that how the world really works. Let me read you. In the break, I quickly penned a speech that we're likely to hear from Bush before the next election and after the next attack. And as I say, it's the administration predicting these attacks. Mm-hmm. Here's his speech. My administration knew that there would be more attacks from these terrorists who hate us and our way of life and are determined to destroy every one of us. If only more of you had believed me and supported my war on terror, these new attacks would not have happened. Our security efforts were impaired by the Democrats' determined attempts to surrender to the terrorists by forcing our withdrawal from Iraq and by civil libertarian assaults on our necessary security measures. If only more Americans had trusted their government, this would not have happened. Now, that's what we're headed for.
Yeah, that kind of language is eerily reminiscent of Mein Kampf.
It always worked. Americans think their danger is terrorists. They don't understand that terrorists cannot take away habeas corpus, the Bill of Rights, the Constitution. It cannot suspend the constitutional government, abolish the separation of powers. It can't pick them up or shut them up or pick them up and arrest them. The terrorists are not anything like the threat that we face to the Bill of Rights and the Constitution from our own government in the name of fighting terrorism. Americans just aren't able to perceive that, or at least not enough of them are.
Mm-hmm. So you're suggesting that given that the mainstream media isn't going to get behind this thing, and given that the majority of Americans are not going to be awake to it, and the old trick which has been used so many times going all the way back to Julius Caesar is going to work, that what we have to do is get these guys out of office before they have an opportunity to pull the trigger on this gun that they've already loaded with all these executive orders. In other words, impeach Bush and Cheney.
Exactly. Bruce Fine, who was an assistant attorney general, I think, in the Reagan administration. He's absolutely correct. If you notice, it's the Republicans like Bruce Fine, myself. Pat Buchanan is a diehard Republican. Just the other day, he published a piece saying that we are due for a new Gulf of Tonkin event. That's why we've got 3 carrier strike forces in the congested waters off Iran. Yeah. It's so obvious to people like us who have long been associated in the government, in the corridors of power, watching how it behaves, seeing everybody in the government chafe under every constraint that's imposed on them, and they always want to get rid of these constraints. And there's no belief in the people or anything like that. They have agendas. The people are in the way. The Constitution's in the way. They're all willing to cut it down, to go chase after whatever agenda that they think is important. Reagan had a problem with neoconservatives, but it was not a neoconservative administration, and he fired their ass. Yeah. And some of them were prosecuted. They themselves concluded from that they had to have a new Pearl Harbor in order to succeed, and they got one with 9/11. Yeah, that was the language from the Project for New American Centuries 1998 document that was signed by Dick Cheney and former Secretary of Defense. He's long been part of it. What will more effectively shut up every critic than another 9/11 type event? Yeah. A lot of us looked at the 50-some-odd specific and direct warnings that the Bush administration had from within our intelligence service, plus the warnings that they had from countries outside the United States that 9/11 was coming. And not only did they do nothing, but they stopped surveillance of Saudis in the United States. Of course, it served their agenda.
If this were a dictatorship, it'd be a heck of a lot easier. Just so long as I'm the dictator.